We had such a good run, man. We had such a good run.
On December 8, 2005, Yakuza released to a resounding thumbs up. Everyone who played it had their own long list of issues with the game, but all of them wanted to see more of Kazuma Kiryu. The team at New Entertainment Division of Sega, now known as Ryuga Gotoku Studio, delivered on that by turning this new Yakuza series into everyone's favorite, an annual release franchise. They've pumped out so many games that Sega can't even properly keep track of them. Like, dude, how do you fuck up your own website? With so many titles out there, a few topics come up more often than others. Like, which entry is the worst? For a while, the answer was generally accepted to be Yakuza Dead Souls, a zombie apocalypse spin-off that they've developed as a filler game right before their biggest project at the time. Filler spin-off with some good-ass music at that. However, that game quickly faded into obscurity as the series went multi-platform, and newer fans simply didn't have a way to play this absolute classic. Not only can you land a 5-hit combo on a zombie, but also this game actually features one of the few well-written female characters in the series.
あんたは
浅木陸上自衛隊三等陸曹浅木美鈴
桐生だ
あげるわ
いや必要ない
It's actually pretty good. Ever since the franchise blew up in popularity, this topic became a lot more divisive. After the collection came out, Yakuza 3 and 4 quickly became universally hated by newer fans, due to both questionable choices made during the development of these games and, at times, comically horrendous porting job. How is this menu still broken? OG fans, however, tend to point at the recent games as the worst. Pirate Yakuza being the filler spin-off of this new era, except with no well-written female characters and with bad music. Bad as in car commercial music. However, there is one game with absolutely no consensus among both the old heads of the series as well as the folk who started with the recent games. A game I consider to be easily the most divisive. A game said to be an unfinished, rushed mess with borderline tech demo worthy combat, barely any content, and no fun to be had in. A game currently not being recommended to be played without mods, or at all even. A game called the Yakuza 6, The Song of Life, and I really like it. This is exactly why I'll be trying to convince you to give it another go. I'll be going over the two main criticisms of the game that people have, its two best selling points, as well as the impact it had on the rest of the series. Since I'll be trying to sell you on it, I won't be talking about the story or any of its set pieces all that much. Everything shown in the trailers for these titles is a fair game. If you don't want to know anything about these games before playing them, you might want to leave. So let's get on with it. Released on December 8, 2016, Yakuza 6 was advertised from every angle as Kiryu Kazuma's last adventure, all set in a shiny new engine developed just for this game called the Dragon Engine. The game kicks off mere hours after the events of Yakuza 5. Immediately, most of the returning cast is put behind bars for years, including our protagonist. Kiryu gets out almost 4 years later, and this time skip facilitates a metric ton of changes both in the gameplay and in the world surrounding it. What's worth mentioning is that general audiences actually messed with the game quite a lot. It was specifically the fans of the series who had a bone to pick with it. The combat is easily the most talked about part of the game to this day. The team at Ryuga Gotoku Studio overhauled it completely just for this title, and the reception was really lukewarm. Even people who like the game itself despise the combat that's in it. Yakuza 6 is usually being compared to its successor mechanically, Yakuza Kiwami 2, a commercially successful remake of the original Yakuza 2 using 6 as a base to build off of. So, I think it's important to start this kind of video with combat, because yeah, it is actually really fun. Let's start with the basics. You have 4 different combo strings that you can perform by inputting a specific amount of light attacks, followed by a heavy attack. This combo ender is called a finishing blow. You can input it twice for a double finishing blow that ends a combo with different properties. Well, issues start here already, as the variety of properties is significantly decreased. Originally, Kiryu's 1-2 was designed to be a quick and safe knockdown, 1-1-2 was as I like to call this, the Tommy launcher, 1-1-1-2 was a traditional uppercut launcher, and the last finishing blow was a kick giving you a ton of distance from the opponent, by sending him flying back. Double finishing blows, or double finishers for short, were guaranteed follow-ups that switched up the move utility. Some were combo extenders, while others became launchers. All of your moves got a lot more sauce in Yakuza 6, yeah. Before, Kiryu used to move as smoothly as a cinder block, but comparatively, Yakuza 6 has no launchers. Not even the Tommy launchers, none! Your 1-2 looks like it does, but don't be fooled. There is no mid-air combo action in this game. The enemy simply stands in place for a moment. 1-1-2 is a low kick that trips over the enemy. Okay, I can see the utility in that. Then your third finishing blow is an uppercut that staggers the enemy in place. Again. And your last finishing blow is a kick that makes the enemy stand in place again. Your double finishers are somehow even worse when it comes to utility. The first one sends the staggered enemy back for some collateral damage. Okay. The second one is a low that sends the tripped over enemy back again. The third one sends the enemy flying back again, and you won't guess what the fourth one does. They all literally do the same thing, except I lied slightly. The third double finisher actually sends the enemy to the right, as if that changes anything. What's also worth mentioning is the horrendous flow that these double finishers have. There is a distinct stop and go that makes them really unreliable. Previous games didn't have that at all. They were instant, where in Yakuza 6 some of them take multiple seconds to perform. Seconds when you're vulnerable the most. If the flow of the combat wasn't bad enough, designers had an idea to introduce a fighting game aspect into pre-existing mechanics, being minus on block. In fighting games, if you didn't know this already, each move has a property attached to it of which of the players can act first after that attack is blocked. In Yakuza 6, you're always on minus and you can't do anything about that. This slows down the game significantly, and mods removing this are unsurprisingly some of the most popular for 6 and Kiwami 2. Normally you could trivialize blocking enemies with grabs, but even these were made weaker. Originally, when throwing an enemy around, you were given iframes for the duration of the entire animation, so that other enemies couldn't hit you. This applied to normal throws, as well as grabs triggered after a finishing blow. These are called bounding throws, by the way. They use some of your meter, so you can't spam it. Yakuza 0, a prequel which was released right before 6, actually removed iframes from standard grabs, but still kept them for bounding throws. This was a pretty smart decision. Yakuza 6 removed iframes from all grabs. Not only that, but also the variety of bounding throws was significantly gimped. Previously, each type of input had a different utility to it. Who would have thought? One to grab originally was a quick burst of damage on a single opponent, while the third bounding throw was a King Classic Giant Swing. It takes longer, but has some good ass range. Yay! We all love King Dewey. Now all bounding throws are giant swings with only 2 variations. Huh? You think it's enough nerfs? Well, bounding throws can now be broken very easily. In previous games, when swinging an enemy around, he's sort of glued to you until you let go of him yourself. In Yakuza 6, it only takes for you to slightly scratch the enemy off of a wall, and Kiryu will let go of him, dealing no damage. Don't get me wrong, it is consistent. If you simply avoid any walls while performing the move, no problems arise. It's not Brawl where you have a 1% chance of failing an action you want to perform for no reason whatsoever, but all of these changes to grabs do make them a lot less universal, which wouldn't be a bad thing if you had other tools to take advantage of during fights. Actually, speaking of useful tools, all the previous games had some sort of weapon inventory system where you could just pull out a baseball bat out of your ass and home run someone's skull. Yakuza 6 got rid of this too. Again, it's not a bad idea on paper, as weapons in the series were always more of a quick power-up with 2 moves rather than a fully fledged moveset. However, this again is another case of a vital tool being removed from the player arsenal. God damn it. Stacking all of these decisions on top of each other adds up pretty quickly. If truly this is all you can do, it's not surprising that people found the combat bad, unrefined, as if there is a key piece missing that just couldn't be finished on time. So, why do some fans still like how Kiryu fights in this game? Not in a guilty pleasure kind of way, but as in the game is actually good kind of way. You feel me? Are they all stupid? And what are these cool ass moves that you can see in the trailer? Were they cut from the final game? No. That's where the fun starts. So, these are reversals. Every single game since Yakuza 1 had these, and they were always a pretty good crowd control tool. Why did only Yakuza 2 mention them in the tutorial? I have no idea. You could get some easy launchers with them, but they were never the best. Useful sometimes, but not always. Well, besides Yakuza 5, where the bounding throw upgrade tied to one of the reversals just doesn't work. You don't need to buy the upgrade to perform this specific string. And this shit's really fucking funny. In Yakuza 6, the team made them feel amazing to use for multiple reasons. Most importantly, they flow a lot better, even while performing a reverse double finishing blow. I know, what a name. It's one continuous motion with no stops in between attacks. There is a reason why they make up a lot of the promotional material of the game. They are both fun to look at and fun to use. Additionally, quick-step attacks, or evasion strikes, or dodge shots. These were a vital punishment tool ever since, again, Yakuza 1. You just press heavy attack during a dodge and wow, now you have a full combo setup. The animation itself always varied depending on the direction of your dodge, and honestly, only the sidestep variant was ever good. Forward dodge was a nice combo extender that did absolutely nothing in the neutral, and the back one is just... why?
What's that?
In Yakuza 6, although slower, they do get a lot more functionality. Their stagger on enemies is doubled, if not tripled, and all of them get a lot more range. Even the backstep one is surprisingly effective against crowds. These moves, although fun, can't save a combat system flawed at its very core. So, how about a lot more of them? Yakuza 4 and 5 had a large number of playable characters, each having their combat defined by very specific and useful abilities. 4 especially is fantastic at that. Kiryu in Yakuza 6 inherits abilities from each of them. The two easiest to spot are Tanimura and Saejima. Tanimura in Yakuza 4 is a defensive grappler with a shit ton of counterplay against enemies. One of his starter moves is a parry. It deals no damage to the enemy, but it can be used as a setup for other strategies, on top of having an entire century worth of active frames. Like, what the fuck is this? Kiryu's parry looks and works almost identical. The parry window is understandably smaller, but the player can act a lot faster now. When Tanimura parries an enemy, they are both able to act afterwards pretty much at the same time. Enemies still have to turn around to hit you, so you're still in a favorable position. Here, Kiryu's animation ends a lot faster, meaning you can get away with a lot more. Tanimura could also parry from every angle, yeah, even from behind. Kiryu does that too, and the animation even changes depending on the angle. That's fucking sick. Missing a parry is not that unfavorable either. What I purposefully left out of the video early is that the same rules apply to both sides. It's not just the player who is minus on block. Yeah, the enemies are too. On top of that, you regain heat after blocking a move, meaning defensive play is better than ever for Kiryu. Blocking is additionally nice thanks to some tech found in all Dragon Engine games. Tech that I haven't seen anyone really give a name to or even talk about. Let's call it guard buffering, block buffering, whatever. Basically, you can input a block during a lot of your animations, and despite you not visually holding up a guard, you will still block incoming attacks. It's not a game changer, but it will help from time to time. Comparatively, Saejima is a purely offensive character. In Yakuza 4, he has no counters, and his dodge makes the Dark Souls movement look viable in a street fight. Yet, he still manages to stand his ground with the help of charged finishing blows. New properties with new follow-ups. Kiryu's charged finishers don't look all that impressive at the moment's glance. Damage does not increase all that much, and enemies don't fly away when hit. Yet. So, what's their purpose? Well, it adds guard break on hit and makes the following double finisher almost guaranteed. If this sounds weak to you, think of the guarding mechanics again. It doesn't trivialize the guard conundrum, but it does give you another tool to overcome situations the game throws at you. Standing charged attack is also a great crowd clearing tool. In Kiwami 2, the better game apparently, these charged finishing blows were removed and nothing about guarding was tweaked. But back to the actually good game. Akiyama's influence is a lot more subtle, even though he is the only previous protagonist with a prevalent role in 6. Well, it's dodge cancelling. Kiryu has had the ability to cancel out of most of his attacks since the Stone Age, but it always had some kind of restriction tied to heat. It either drained heat when used or was entirely disabled specifically when you had heat. Comparatively, Akiyama never had to deal with this, letting him cancel out of anything, anytime. I guess after fighting alongside him, Kiryu picked up a skill or two. I don't think I have to extensively explain why dodge cancelling is useful. All of this can be interpreted narratively as Kiryu learning from people he fought alongside. This is a way for their legacy to live on, even though they don't actually appear in the game. Even though they were probably just sitting in the office like, that Tanimura parry is pretty good. Let's just give it to Kiryu in the next game. With all of this in mind, aspects of the combat that previously seemed like inexcusable issues now look like they were actually pretty well thought out. Yeah, there is a 2-second gap between double finishers, but you can simply cancel out of it and do a quickstep attack. Or maybe just charge the first finisher for a guaranteed follow-up. Grabs having no iframes now makes the player choose between them or maybe the backstep attack, or maybe a standing charge attack when it comes to crowd control. Each has its pros and cons. As the GOAT said,
See, it was kind of ass when I was ass at it. Then I took some time to learn its basic mechanics, and I'm much more into it now.
these slight differences between strings are not outstanding, but it's still enough to keep you engaged while choosing between them, rather than just mashing two buttons over and over again. Some issues inarguably persist, like having no launchers. Unbelievably lame. Grabs also deal chip damage on contact, even if you break out of them instantly, Tekken 8 style. It's not really a big deal since it's pretty much impossible to die from this, but it does annoy me specifically. You might also point out that a lot of the stuff I just mentioned is blocked off by the upgrade system, which is true. Early fights when unprepared feel like being stuck in the goddamn Perwiggler. However, most of these moves are surprisingly cheap. This is how many I got under 2 hours of starting a new save file. Under 2 hours while watching all the cutscenes, which is most of the time. However, the fact that you have to unlock dodge cancelling at all is moronic. Like, why do we have to work towards the game playing well? Yakuza 4 was the only game that actually lets you unlock dodge cancelling within the first hour of the game. Wait, actually within the fucking tutorial segment alone. Is it just me, or does 4 have the best upgrade system in all of action games? This shit is so tight!
Tight, yeah!
Everything I mentioned so far when it comes to tech is specifically about moves you always have access to, but that's not where the game triumphs. Let's talk about heat. It's a combination of both a fighting game meter system where you spend it to use some cool ass moves, and an action game style ranking since you gain it by performing generally well in battles. These special moves are called heat actions, by the way. They are fully choreographed supers that you can use under the right circumstances. Some are basic, like holding an enemy near a guardrail, while others take the form of a parry. Yeah, you also don't gain the meter by purely landing hits, but also by taunting or performing perfect dodges. Similar to a DMC style meter, it decreases quickly if you take damage or stand in place for too long, forcing you to always keep the pace up, or at least it used to. Yakuza 6 is the first mainline game to ditch the overtime drain of heat. The heat gauge now only drops on its own when in the new extreme heat mode, which is more of a devil trigger. You have to press R2 to enter this state so you can wreak even more havoc than usual. Your moves gain armor and you yourself gain the ability to endure deadly blows at the cost of heat. This change most likely was implemented due to how bigger the levels are now. Before it was a set of arenas connected via a couple of corridors. Now you're jumping, climbing, jumping some more, balancing on some broken construction, chasing. It would be real annoying to constantly lose all of your heat for absolutely no reason. And this is probably why taunting was removed, as losing heat is now a lot harder. It's their attempt at also making it slightly harder to gain heat, you know what I mean? Maybe I'm missing something, but Kiwami 2 not only brought back taunting, but also gave you an upgrade that fills all of your heat gauge with a single taunt. So what exactly can you do in this extreme heat mode that you can't do normally? Well, you get access to more moves. I know. Who would have thought? There is an annoying automatic weapon pickup in extreme heat that's rarely useful. Thankfully, you can cancel this by simply holding down the left trigger. You can also use this to cancel out of activating any heat actions by accident. Your crowd control moves double in the number of enemies hit, high damage punish options now open up on normal enemies, many moves like the dropkick or the rolling thunder kick get new follow-ups. But also you get high damage moves on every kind of stunned enemy. There are 3 types of stuns and each of them has 2 different follow-ups, from the front and from the back. It's pretty cool. You can also grab enemies from these states even if they are on the ground. This is another case of the game removing some universally good options and adding in a couple more situational moves that you have to consider before using. Well, there is also a 4th stun that's actually pretty universal. Previous games allowed for enemies to bounce off of walls, which you could use for some wall pressure while adding in that grounded feeling. Picture Tekken 4, but without everyone complaining. As this game has no launchers and no mid-air juggling, walls became a tool for a stun setup. Use any move that causes a slight pushback on the enemy against a wall and bam! Guaranteed stun. Entering extreme heat though every time you wanna perform a single move is cumbersome. You gotta sit through the same animation over and over and over again to the point where it's tiring. Sometimes enemies might just leave the state that you need them to be before the animation ends. So, can you bypass this problem? There is a hidden move with no name, only accessible when the player has at least 4 heat orbs full. A move that single-handedly solves a lot of situations you might find yourself in. So let's talk about Tekken. In Tekken 8 there is also a heat system where you can enter heat to access new moves or for other moves to gain new properties. Trust me, this is somehow relevant. Besides just popping heat, you can also perform what's known as a heat burst. It's a downwards move that also activates heat. It's pretty good at shutting down enemy offense like a counter. 8 years before Tekken 8, Kiryu already had this in Yakuza 6. As it has no official name, from now on I'll be just referring to it as a heat burst. Sumi. It might look unassuming as it's a simple knockdown, but it gains extra properties as a counter. By extra properties, I mean it sends the enemy flying. And unlike something like a Devil Trigger, Extreme Heat has no cooldown on how quickly you can leave it. You're facing 4 full health enemies in a tight corridor and it's a little hard to approach them. Just press R2 and bam! 2 of them are dead and the rest is barely breathing. Oh yeah, this move loves to put enemies into stun right as it puts you, the player, into extreme heat, meaning you can use a follow-up instantly. It's also the fastest knockdown option that you have, so not even trying to use it as a parry is purely beneficial. All of that at the cost of range though, so it doesn't solve the game entirely. The fact that you need to have at least 4 orbs to use it also forces you to be more aware of your heat consumption. Yeah, you can technically just mash light attack for some easy damage, but that will halve your heat gauge, making you unable to use one of your best moves. It's so well balanced, I'm pretty sure by accident. And Kiwami 2, there is also a system in place for maintaining your heat rather than spending it all. That's because in K2 you can only enter extreme heat when the heat gauge is full. Yes, even when you have 5 separate bars to fill, you can only do so when at max. Does that mean upgrading your max heat gauge is bad for you, technically, as you're making it harder to go into extreme heat? I read online quite a lot that this game apparently has barely any heat actions, and I'm like, boy, did you play the game! You get your typical wall, shelf, ledge, guardrail, which is a series standard. All of these have front and back variants, which is less common for the 2 people that don't know this yet. You can switch from a front grab to a chokehold and vice versa by simply pressing block during a grab. This is present in all the games since Yakuza 5, I believe. Judgment, a game released right after 6, implies that chokehold grabs affect how enemies act during this one little segment, but To be real with you, I think the game just tries to gaslight you. Anyways, all types of weapons not only get their own hit actions, but also counters against enemies wielding them, where Kiryu just snatches their shit in a brutal way. Some weapons like lead pipes and baseball bats do have different disarming hit actions despite using the same moveset. This is all neat, but not groundbreaking for the series. So, how about the ridiculous amount of variety? I already told you about the 6 different follow-ups from a stun, so how about 4 different Essence of Fast Footwork variants depending on which direction you step into? The dropkick itself has 2 different variations depending on your speed, which is interesting. Both of these variations also have their own follow-ups with hit actions. Wall-related moves are getting a little bit boring, don't you think? So how about a hit action specifically for a corner? Or how about a follow-up after a back fist? Or hit actions just having variants under specific circumstances, like a location or against a specific boss. Stairs hit action? How about 2 separate stairs hit actions depending on your position on the stairs? What's great is that all the arbitrary limitations on hit actions have been lifted. Some would require you to specifically be at full health, some specifically to be at low health, some will require you to have all of your heat. None of this is present in Yakuza 6. It's either extreme heat only or no additional requirements at all. This amount of heat actions makes up the variety for player expression. I especially appreciate all the heat actions in Yakuza 6 because they are all original for the first time since the Stone Age. All previous games had at least a couple of moves lifted straight from the previous game. And this game doesn't! The 3 moves that I've noticed were completely reanimated to fit better into 6's art style and narrative context. Like one of the stairs hit actions I just mentioned. It's from Majima in Yakuza 0. Except now, it's short and to the point. There is no cheeky playing around anymore. Kiryu is out for blood. So now I hope you see the appeal of 6's combat. Although it's based on the same mechanics, it takes a vastly different direction from its predecessors. You're forced to be a lot more reactive rather than proactive. If I were to be mean, I would just call all the critics bad at the game, but let's be real for a second. Yakuza games were never good at explaining their systems. I firmly believe that all combat-focused games like this should have some sort of training mode to them. This combined with maybe some combo challenges or punish challenges would encourage people to experiment more with the mechanics at hand. Instead, when you go on gamefax.com, you will see people asking for advice when it comes to fighting basic enemies. Hey guys, I'm struggling with combat in this entry, any tips? And no one is recommending dodge cancelling, no one is mentioning guard break on charged finishing blows, nothing even about quick step attacks. It's just spam the dropkick, mash light in extreme heat. Considering all of that, it's no surprise that people just don't bother experimenting at all, especially when the entire community acts as if there is no depth to be found. When talking about the game, combat is not the only underappreciated part, it's also what you return to after a quick fight. It's the world of Yakuza 6. The consensus online is that this game has the weakest world to explore. The returning town is small and less interesting than its previous iterations, and the location exclusive to the game, despite looking pretty, is small as hell and has nothing to do in there. And they are not talking about Gaiden. I know. Kamurocho is the red light district of Tokyo, fictional counterpart to real-life Kabukicho. It's the series' main state, appearing in almost every entry. As you can guess, activities there are typical to a major city. You can go to a bar, get drunk and play some darts. There are 2 Sega arcades with different machines there to find. There's also a gym with a personal trainer that's actually a real life gym, and you can go to a karaoke bar to sing your heart out. There are hostess clubs, which to my puny European brain seem like places for lonely people to go to. What I like about most of these is that they are either completely new or redesigned, so they still feel fresh. Like going on a longer combo in karaoke puts you into heat, as if you're fighting for your life, which is cute. Or the hostess minigame, which went from picking a choice you think the hostess will like to picking a choice you think the hostess will like in the form of a card game where you're also trying to keep as high of a combo as you can. These combos represent smoothly transitioning from topic to topic, I guess. They literally slay the Spired Degunin minigame. These changes are actually a central theme to the new Kamurocho. The 4-year time skip at the start of the game affected more things than you would think. Iconic places like Theater Square have gotten a slightly new look to them. The actual Kamuro Theater was redone completely with a cafe inside and this cozy little place. Some construction present in the game since the Bronze era was finally finished, while some go under renovations, like this place, or the entirety of Champions District. You even run through some of its construction during the story. Take a look at this closed down convenience store, or this ice cream place, or rather a gelato place. I don't know what the difference is. It's like the city hasn't stopped living without you. There's no comment from Kiryu along the lines of "Damn, it's been here since the late 80s and now it's gone. Now I'm sad." They expect you to notice these things yourself. Or maybe they just left this idea for the next time they would make a Kiryu Kazuma's Last Adventure, but you didn't hear that from me? Most importantly, during that period of time, a series of arsons tore through the city. These forced renovations were led by a new gang in town. That power imbalance between multiple large criminal organizations makes a really good first impression. You always start a Yakuza game with a restricted part of the map, and 6 is no different. Except instead of visible invisible walls or I have no reason to go there, here it's a lot more diegetic. There are cops everywhere investigating something. Probably what clocks are the barkeeps using? Some of your first tasks in the city include investigating a crime scene and witnessing multiple turf takeovers. All of that with an ever-present siren in the distance. It leaves a strong first impression. It's weird that even though sub-stories already start appearing in Chapter 1, the north part of the map is still blocked off. Well, in Yakuza 1 you don't get the full map until Chapter 5, after you return to the city from a big set piece. In Chapter 3 you go to the other city of the game, so probably when you get back to Kamurocho then it opens up, and it doesn't. They didn't finish the game. This overshadows pretty much all detail put into the world you're exploring, as this pretty small segment of the map actually contains one of its most notable landmarks. West Park, later named Kamurocho Hills, is a property with a lot of lore surrounding it. This park turned into a multi-billion worth complex with a mall tied to a hotel. Its development was always tied to the main story in some capacity, but it was never traditionally explorable. Yeah, we fought our way through it many times at various stages of its construction. Yakuza 5 even featured it fully completed with an enormous outdoors area, as well as with a beautifully detailed interior. Before playing 6, I always imagined Kamurocho Hills as a new addition to the hub, and it's not what we got. We do see it in the prologue of the game, but that's it. Blocked off for construction reasons. Although the game didn't meet my expectations there, I didn't really care about it. Why? Well, the game did make up for it in various ways. First of all, even though Park Boulevard is inaccessible, the north side of the map is somehow more packed than ever. There are twice as many convenience stores and 5 times as many restaurants there. This is not only useful to regain some health quickly, but the food now gives you a lot more XP than it used to. You can also find the black market guy here after popping this dummy manhole cover. At least I think it's supposed to be fake, considering Kiryu opens it with one hand. Like, I don't think he has the strength to just... I take it back. You can also leave the sewers through a different manhole at the doorstep of some hotel. This game has a ton of little shortcuts like this. You can ignore the staff at Cafe Yalps and walk through the back exit. There are a ton of places that just don't have a reason to be there. There is no objective that ever leads you here, but there doesn't have to be. One of the main themes of the game is accepting change, as pretentious as it might sound. Kamurocho in Yakuza 6 is a defining symbol of it. A walkable symbol at that. Your typical "a guy is getting scammed" set of side missions in the series now tends to include some technological progress. There's a man who spends all of his life savings on a relationship-esque scam, except this time it's a campsite. Here is Kiryu trying out this new AI assistant that's slowly attempting to control how people think. It also has a seductive setting to it. Oh wait, that's just real now. All of this ties to this theme of change, and I really mess with this. In similar fashion, Kamurocho Hills doesn't need to be in the game. Were some of these choices a result of an insane crunch that devs had to pull for this game to release on time? Almost certainly, but as a result, we got one of the most cohesive thematically worlds in the series. And I haven't even talked about Hiroshima yet. Onomichi, unlike Kamurocho, is a real-life city in real-life Hiroshima. As you probably already know, Onomichi in-game is almost entirely based on its real-life counterpart. Here you have a couple of examples. It's fine to just walk around the town in Google Street View and count how many places you'll actually recognize. I seriously recommend it. This unoriginality might also be one of the results of the crunch, as it's easier to replicate something rather than to create something from the ground up. A recreation faithful to this degree does add to the authenticity. Yakuza 6 is probably the most immersive game in the series. It was already apparent in Kamurocho with things such as full voice acting from everybody, including all of the side content, which the series hasn't done since. But Onomichi excels at this. People here are dressed differently, as job opportunities here are probably different from a big city. It's not surprising, but none of the previous games actually featured this kind of detail before. Neon lights are absent, and nighttime for the first time in the series actually looks appropriate. Subtle lighting changes, differently dressed NPCs, is how you make two cities visually distinct from each other. I vastly prefer this over adding in some of the most obnoxious color grading I've ever seen in media. There are no convenience stores or fast food chains, which is actually one of the more common complaints about the city from the community. But like, why? One of the most memorable tasks in Onomichi is trying to buy milk for a baby at 11 PM, when the only 2 stores in town are closed. This is new for the series, as the devs would always make sure the player could always go to a convenience store, go to an arcade, or just go fishing even if the city had no lakes or rivers. Why can Shinada fish here? Oh yeah, your standard activities are also a lot different. You can't go to a hostess club or to an arcade, as there simply aren't any. Instead, you can go spearfishing, take part in a local baseball match, or meet and make new friends at a local pub. Unlike the hostess minigame, this has no cards. Unlike the Hostess minigame, over time the game makes you deadass care about these few random people. You even meet here owners of other establishments in the town, like the pawn shop guy. Remember the black market guys I mentioned 20 minutes ago? These motherfuckers only open up to you after the barkeep at La Pante trusts you enough. Various people from side missions found in Onomichi even appear in the Today's Diamond music video. This makes me happy. And then I looked up the lyrics for Today's Diamond. Similar to Kamurocho, there is some overall theme of change present here. Since it's a small town with considerably older folk, the town is a lot more conservative, not accepting change. For example, you meet Gensan, who sees all change as pointless, as his favorite karaoke place introduced a new karaoke machine, the same machine as seen in Tokyo. Kiryu, with his infinite wisdom, manages to persuade Gen into giving the machine a try, and he likes it. Yay! There are also some miscellaneous things to see, like these poem stones that Kiryu reads out loud. There is no checklist related to them, no read all poem stones achievement. It's just for fun. Speaking of video game tourism, Onomichi has these temples that you can interact with. Each temple has a unique menu and a unique bonus for the player. Because of how out of the way they are, you won't be using them a lot. They are sorta a better but harder to reach vending machine. Oh, vending machines! Vending machines are another piece of the puzzle worth mentioning. There are two types of vending machines, red and blue. Each has its set of drinks found, and every drink has some special effect attached to it. That lasts for X amount of time or for X amount of uses. These can be an XP gain or damage dealt bonus or infinite stamina. All of these expensive sprint upgrades? Useless when you can just hydrate properly and never run out of stamina. It does add a little bit of planning to your routes, but it's certainly worth it. On my first playthrough, I combined this with equipment that significantly boosts your XP gain at the cost of stamina. I got all the abilities and I maxed out all of Kiryu's stats, which is intended for the post-game before the end of Chapter 8. Everyone's favorite game, Kiwami 2, removed any kind of brain activity from the system, letting you buy and hoard all the items from the vending machine straight into your pockets. Is this more convenient? Yeah, it is. In the same way insta-killing every enemy is convenient. These are things that the game does not directly tell you about, but after interacting with these two systems at least once, it's easy to connect the dots. However, I don't blame anyone for not doing it. Ever! Keep in mind that statistically, this is your average player's 7th Yakuza game. Most of them marathon these games back to back, and the further they get, the less time they spend on each game. My friend beat Yakuza 6 in 2 days, not touching any of its side content, even though that side content is half of the fun. This game has one of the best realized and one of the most immersive worlds I've seen in games that somehow manages to stay cartoonishly fun at all times. What I think sells the game is the culmination of the game's first act, so to speak. Early on, the game is very understanding of you and your gamer brain still learning the mechanics. There are no sequences of multiple fights in a row, boss fights are quick and simple. This changes during the hotel raid. 5 men in ski masks jump out of a Ford Vivaro and bam, you're forced to fight your way through an entire building, floor by floor by floor. However, the main attraction is its finale, a boss fight against a top-ranking Yakuza lieutenant, Takumi Somaya. In his undies. Somaya from the very beginning of the game is presented as Kiryu's antithesis. He's one of the few top-ranking officers of a Yakuza organization Kiryu was a part of, the Tojo clan. However, this dojo is not the same as it once was, aiming for convenience rather than tradition. Someya, to some extent, is the symbol of this new era of Yakuza, not only through his beliefs, but most notably, he doesn't have a tattoo. He sees it as only hindrance that geezers stuck to for the sake of their tradition. This leads to the first real boss fight of the game. Although almost everything divides these two, they do have two things in common. They are both incredibly prideful and both of them are willing to use their fists to prove who's better. The fight is really engaging. Someya has a lot of quick checks to catch you off guard and stop your offense. But his longer combo strings and grabs require a lot of commitment from him and leave him open for attacks, the same as you. When people say that Yakuza 6 is the closest the series gets to a fighting game, this is what they mean by that. You're constantly forced to go for risky moves to get your damage in. The fight gets even more serious once he pops the hit. Instead of getting arbitrarily higher damage, he gets a jump-in move that he uses as a counter-attack off of specific states. This can be blocked for some heat back or sidestep for your own counter-attack. Not all of them will be successful as Someya has some good defense. Although extreme heat guarantees you big damage, Someya can block your unblockable attacks. He is the first enemy to do so. What ties together this serious crime drama and cartoonish side activities is the music. In Yakuza, similar to other Sega properties, the soundtrack is easily the most consistent aspect of the series. All the previous games featured a mix of catchy electronic tracks, and tracks with some hard-ass drums and guitar riffs. Score during story set pieces is a lot more grand and oppressive this time around. Yakuza 6 is no different in terms of general direction, but in terms of style. Electronic tracks now got these orchestral strings selling you on the urgency and importance of what you're doing. On the other hand, the guitars got a lot more grungy and in your face. Someya, as you might have guessed already, doesn't let down sonically. From this point on, the bosses only get better and better, but I will leave them for you to revisit. Or maybe experience for the first time. This fight is not the game's highlight, it's the hook. The hook that will make you want more. This fight, however, wasn't in the final game. Combing through the files of the game or just watching the demo scenario proves how much the team at Ryuga Gotoku Studio was pushing themselves to meet the deadline. Take a look at this early Yakuza 6 demo. It features an exclusive non-canon scenario, sort of a what if Kiryu never went to jail episode, featuring Satsuki, a side mission villain from the final game. The world was originally even more immersive. Set pieces were supposed to have additional objectives that actually had some sort of impact. Satsuki threatens to throw this guy off of the window, but if you act fast enough you can save his ass and get some XP gain item. If you take too long, well, levels were also a lot more dynamic. Sometimes bosses would try to jump you, while others would simply try to run. This rooftop segment is actually accessible in the finished game. Nothing takes place here, but the layout in the final game is different. strange. When it comes to combat itself, there is a shit ton of unused moves for Kiryu. There are variations for throws, unfinished follow-ups, and limb-specific parries when it comes to the already existing moveset. More importantly, there is a lot of evidence pointing to a whole boxing stance for Kiryu that was scrapped, seemingly after the motion capture for it was already done. You could weave and dodge out of a standing guard, as well as counter out of a block. These three mechanics were already in Yakuza 0, so RGG planning to bring them back is no surprise. There are also straight and hook reversals, as well as these cool rapid fire combos. There are seemingly no leftover combo strings for this boxing stance. However, there is also Jungi Han, who is a boss utilizing boxing. His moves do have that playable look to them, you know what I mean? As in, it's easy to imagine them as actions a player could do. Unsurprisingly, Jungi Han also has the same unfinished standing weave, as well as a bizarre defensive mechanic a boss would certainly wouldn't need to use, but a player would. There's a chance that some stuff done for boxing player moves was simply moved to Han, as a way to save on resources. Design choices aimed at trimming the development time down is not unusual for this game to do. I think it's time to talk about the impact Yakuza 6 had on the rest of the series. Almost every game afterwards was using this shiny new engine. Yeah, you already sat through a number of examples of why I believe Kiwami 2 is a watered down version of 6, but that's not the only game referred to as what Yakuza 6 should have done. There is one more game like that. The Song of Life actually received a direct sequel after a total of 7 years. The development of this game was actually even shorter than 6's. According to the director, it had 6 months of full-on dev time. 6 months! Despite the fact that it was released 14 months after its initial teaser trailer. We know that they didn't just sit on it for half a year after they finished it, because the localization was barely finished on time, with multiple last minute changes, errors, and the English dub releasing as an update after the game was already out. So, did they have 8 months of pre-production? That must mean the game was planned out to a T, right? Well, the game, from what we know, was co-developed alongside 3 other titles by one team. Oh! Yeah, goddammit. Yakuza 6 featured both a new take on a city we already know, combined with a completely new location, focusing mainly on the stuff we haven't seen already. Gaiden has nothing new to see, only featuring things us consumers know and like. Gaiden's only new location is a take on a place we've already seen before, an underground red light district with a casino, coliseum, and hot-ass women. Both are also water-themed if the inspiration wasn't clear enough. However, combat with its Yakuza stance has received a lot of praise compared to 6, with a lot of people saying this is how Kiryu should have been. God damn it. With a lot of people saying that this is how Kiryu should have played in Yakuza 6. The only aspect that I found neat is that the new combo string extension respects the design choices of 6. You can now do a triple finishing blow, but it has an even longer wind up than the double, meaning it's even more of a risk with even more of a reward. All of these animations look sick as hell. They even undid a Kiwami 2 mishap and brought back charged finishing blows for that guard break fun at the cost of additional risk. At least, I wish I could say that. But now also you're facing no risk whatsoever. Now charged finishing blows, besides guard break, also gain launch. full armor and quadruple damage. There is no reason not to use charged attacks at all times. Their previous game, Lost Judgment, featured a fighting style called Tiger that's also red and also had armored charged finishers with good damage. Or launchers. Or you were forced to choose between launching an enemy with a normal finisher for potentially a full combo if you don't drop it, or a charged finisher dealing good damage that sends the enemy out of your range. This was a choice between these two. Even though launchers are brought back in Gaiden, your attack speed is insanely gimped and the game has a 6-second hard lock on airtime for bosses, meaning even if you tried, you can't put any sauce on it. That makes launchers closer to dangling keys in your face rather than a fully implemented mechanic. Both the hit burst and normal parry were removed and replaced with this counter on block that has no risks involved besides getting grabbed while blocking. It's like they learned all the wrong lessons. Take a look at grabs. These were given no iframes once again, but now they cover no ground. Bounding throws are now also restricted to extreme heat. You also can't grab enemies from the back or manually switch to chokehold. It's gone, meaning a lot of your variety was just removed for no reason. Actually, all of the variety was removed. Remember that dodge hit action, which had 4 different variations depending on your direction? Essence of fast footwork. Now it's only forward. All hit actions in 6 were also made specifically for that game. Can you tell me how many original hit actions this Yakuza style has? I counted 1 actually original and 1 reanimated, with that Power Rangers effect on top of that. Gaiden admits defeat in many ways. Where Yakuza 6 detached Kiryu from his allies to challenge the character, Gaiden already showed off in the second trailer that it will reunite all legacy characters. A game about pride and accepting change was followed up with an entry that pretends it's about that, while also proving the team's inability to change. I don't wanna bash the developers or writers for this too much, as they agree with me on this.
ただでさえリメイクっていうそのビハインドがある中で薄いと思うよ、考え方が全部。
Here he is 2 minutes later, hearing that the higher-ups expect even more empty cameos.
立つねにしたい理由ってあるの？このキャラ。
これも、SOA から人気のキャラだと言われてるというのが。
What we've got is a real shame since it almost entirely overshadows Yakuza 6 nowadays, spitting on any of its legacy both thematically and playably. Thankfully, I don't have to end this video on a sour note, as Ryuga Gotoku Studio released a good game a whole year before Gaiden was announced. A game which follows up on Yakuza 6 with haha better judgment. Essentially, Lost Judgment combines launchers, wall pressure, better grab tech and pure proactive abilities from the PS3 era with Yakuza 6's reactive style of gameplay, like a ridiculous amount of counterplay and forcing stun on enemies. Its protagonist Yagami got more options than ever, but enemies are deadlier and smarter than ever. What's more interesting is that many ideas the Song of Life never fully utilized are here in their full glory. Instead of 3 different stuns that pretty much do the same thing and just look differently, you're able to inflict more status ailments on enemies like Agony. Agony makes enemies unable to dodge, which might sound like a worse stun, but it lasts longer and leads to different follow-ups. Besides having disarming hit actions for every weapon type, you can simply manually disarm enemies via a special grab. Boxing makes its mainline debut in Lost Judgment and it's amazing. It has all kinds of utility. Guard break, great mobility, perfect dodges, the best taunt in the game, launchers, surprisingly good range, but it locks all of that behind difficult execution. Just like that Steve guy. Unfinished limb-specific counters from 6 are also implemented in Lost Judgment, specifically in the DLC campaign, while playing as Kaito in his bruiser style. Instead of being separate inputs, it's one parry that simply changes its animation depending on the move parried. Sometimes it's a deflect, sometimes it's a kick. Same DLC also finally uses that building from the Yakuza 6 demo, both as an action set piece and as a stealth segment afterwards, saving resources to a degree Yakuza 6 would be proud of. People tend to say that 6 was a stepping stone for games after it. Yakuza 6 walked so Lost Judgment could run, which is true, but not from a purely engine standpoint like many claim. It realizes concepts that didn't fully stick the landing in 6, while combining them with mechanics we came to love the series for. Lo and behold, when talented people are given an opportunity to learn from their mishaps or work they never managed to finish on time, they are able to create a piece of media people can't get enough of years down the line. No matter how many times they will try to undermine or retcon Yakuza 6's existence in the new titles, the game itself is not going anywhere. I purposefully left out of this video Yakuza 6's story, stages, clan creation, boss fights against real-life wrestlers. I hope I made at least one person give this game another chance, even if it's to see the dumbass UFO fight some ghosts or counterhook a shark. Go on and have fun with it.